Planned Parenthood wants to open a clinic in a California high school. Crime continues to surge in Portland, Oregon. We have a good guy with a gun stopping a mass shooter in Indiana. And Chris Pratt going to be Indiana Jones. All that and more here on The Bald Brad Show. Welcome to The Bald Brad Show. It is Tuesday, July 19th, and I couldn't be happier to spend these fine mornings with all of you, the true American patriots. As always, if you want to support The Bald Brad Show and you're watching over at YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and leave us a nice comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, leave us a lovely 5-star review. You would be supporting conservative and helping conservative thought and ideas get out to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel, so your help and support would be greatly appreciated. With that being said, a lot of news to cover, just as always, a lot of destruction being done by the Democrat Party and the progressive left. And you might be saying, Brad, what's new? You talk about this all the time. Well, folks, we have new developments happening with the progressive left and the Democrat Party within our school systems, which leads me to the lead story of the day regarding a Planned Parenthood clinic wants to open in a Southern California high school, and it will only happen if the local board approves. Now, folks, we're talking about California here, one of the most leftist states in the union. You think this thing's going to pass? It's probably going to happen. And wait till we just go through the details of this story. You're going to fall over in your chair, the stuff that the left is willing to do. We thought like the whole gender identity stuff was bad, indoctrination. This is taking it a whole step further by not telling parents what they're going to do to their children. Wait till we get through that. This is going to take place at Norwalk La Mirada Unified School District, so Southern California, and it would be allowing a Planned Parenthood Los Angeles to open and operate a clinic at John Glenn High School in Norwalk. This comes from Fox News. But what are the details of all of this? Abortions and gender-affirming hormone therapy are not listed among services that would be provided at the clinic. You might be thinking, oh, thank God, they finally have awoken and realized that they shouldn't be doing abortions and gender-affirming hormone therapy on school site. There's a catch, folks. There's a catch. However, the proposal indicates that clinic staff can make referrals to other Planned Parenthoods for services not offered at the school site. So, kid walks in, I want abortion. Kid walks in, I want gender-affirming hormone therapy. Oh, no problem. No problem. The line's right over there. Get in line, buddy, because we got it all set up for you. We can't offer you the service here, but hell, we got referrals up the Yi-Yang for you. Where do you live? We got Planned Parenthoods all over the place in this state. They're like Starbucks on every corner. Why don't we go ahead and take care of you real quick? So the clinic staff can also write prescriptions and offer pharmaceuticals related to reproductive health, including contraceptives, and can perform insertions on non-surgical long-acting reversible contraceptives and IUDs. Again, this is reported by Fox News. In addition, the proposed agreement states that while the clinic will encourage students to involve their families in decision-making, we've heard this one before, right? How many times have we heard these school districts having drag queens perform for these students while these students take your hard-earned money that you're giving them for lunch and food and tipping them while they're there? Or putting these clubs on campus that nobody's ever heard of. They're not in the registry, but you're having these people groom them and walk them through their transitions, trying to invite their friends to be groomed as well, not knowing what the club is about. But you're going to tell me that they're going to try and encourage students to get their parents involved? Yeah, right. On reproductive health, minors can get services without parental consent. Yes, folks, you heard me correctly here. On reproductive health, minors can get services without parental consent or notification, and this comes under California law. Isn't that wild? The stuff that this state is allowing minors to do without parental consent. It gets worse. The contract would last 5 years if approved and would require board approval every succeeding 5 years. The board should be ashamed, opponents are saying. Quote, families and taxpayers should be horrified that the Norwalk La Mirada USD is considering a partnership with Planned Parenthood. This comes from Nicole Nelly, president and founder of Parents Defending Education. The fact that the contract specifically notes that under California law, minors have the right to consent to reproductive health services without parental consent or notification is appalling in and of itself, as it lists of services that will be offered to children from STD treatment to IUDs to referrals to other health centers operated by provider for services not offered at the school. All this is willing and enabling students to go under the rug behind their parents' back to get services without, again, their parents ever knowing about this. This has been going on time and time again, and a lot of us on the right and conservatives are getting kind of sick of it. I mean, hell, the Democrat Party has gone so far left that literally they've started a coalition of parents to go against the Democrat Party, to go against this current White House administration, namely Joe Biden. Well, she also went on and added that other Planned Parenthood clinics do provide gender-affirming hormone therapy. So there is a very real possibility students will be referred off campus to receive this treatment. So again, they're going, oh, well, we're not offering abortions and gender hormone therapy. Are you crazy? No, we would never do that. We're going to write your kid a nice referral without you ever knowing to an off-site so they can get treatment and groomed over there. Again, this is with zero parental notification. She also argued there is no way for parents to ever obtain this information, as the contract asserts that all medical records are to be maintained by Planned Parenthood. This is minors, okay? These aren't even adults. This is getting so out of hand. The amount of stuff these schools are willing to do behind your back. And for those that are new to the Bald Brad Show, one, obviously welcome. Two, I'm a high school math teacher myself. I've talked about this at length on the Bald Brad Show. We've obviously seen Matt Walsh talk about this from the Daily Wire. We've seen Blaze Media talk about this. A lot of outlets are talking about it. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been instructed to not notify parents on certain situations because the kid hasn't notified the parents either. This comes from the school psychologist. This comes from the admin. I got a ton of stories on this stuff, which I've shared on the show, as well as been on Anthony Brian Logan's show a couple times talking about this as well. Quote, for over 100 years, federal courts have consistently found that parents and not schools maintain primary decision-making authority over their children, particularly when it comes to medical care. The Norwalk La Mirada School Board should be ashamed that this contract is even up for consideration and be mindful of their significant legal exposure should be ratified. It is crazy that this is even taking place. And it's going to continue. It's going to get worse. If California is going to lead the brigade here and all this craziness, it's going to hop into Portland, Oregon. It's going to hop into Washington. It's going to hop into New York, all these other leftist dominant states. And it's only going to get worse in terms of parents having control over their kids on what the school district is doing and what the kids are being allowed to do without the parents' consent. Basically, you're losing all power, folks. Nuts. The cable network, citing a Planned Parenthood statement, also reported that the organization has been partnering with local schools to create a safe space for students to receive reproductive health and education. Now, what's that education they're talking about, right? We all know really what it is. The Los Angeles chapter in 2019 said it was opening 50 new clinics in area high schools to provide healthcare services, education, parent resources, and support the students on campus, adding that the initial 3-year contract reportedly cost Los Angeles County taxpayers $10 million. It's not going to stop them from grooming. It's not going to stop them from having drag queens on campus. It's not going to stop them from creating these clubs on campus, and the administration doesn't know when in fact they do. It's not on the registration. So if you were to audit this thing, there's nothing. There's nothing of it other than the kids being pulled into these. In some cases, we've had stories here where some child had her friend pull her in. She started questioning her own identity, went to her mother, and her mother's like, why are you talking like this? The mother found out and ultimately ousted that club and the district. And the district said at the time, we knew nothing about it. After the investigation, turns out they all knew about it. So they're willing to lie regarding all these things. And now you got this stuff happening out in the public in the state of California, my lovely home state. And this is all taking place now. Unbelievable. Now, speaking of other news in which the left is continuing to destroy things quite literally, not just metaphorically, but quite literally, you have Portland here. Oh, lovely Portland, folks. This one is just so mind-boggling that these Dems are willing to continually vote these idiots in office that are willing to let this type of destructive behavior take place within their areas. So violent crime in Portland, Oregon has drastically risen over the last 3 years. Most previously in 2020, when the city saw nearly protests every night and riots over the death of George Floyd. I mean, there was cases where the Democrats and progressive left literally took over actual blocks of cities called Chap and Chaws, and it was ran by Antifa. You have a great book called Unmasked, written by Andy Ngo, that talks all about this and how he infiltrated their I don't even know what you call them, their clubs, their rallies, their protests, whatever it may be. While at the same time, you had Joy Behar of The View say that they're just an ideology, that they don't actually exist. While they have pamphlets, they have actual recruitment. They've been freaking interviewed on TV, but they don't exist according to Joy Behar. She's just going to continue to spout her rants and idiotic agendas on live television. But back to this, there's a report that confirms that unfortunate reality of what we already knew. The gun violence is on the rise in Portland. And it's being driven by a very small percentage of our population. This comes from the Portland Mayor, Ted Wheeler. This guy is just terrible. Wait till you see a video clip here that I'm going to show you in a moment of what people have to say about this guy. So researchers for the California Partnership for Safe Communities compiled crime data from the city, specifically examining homicides and non-fatal shootings from 2019 to 2021. The data found that there was a 144% increase in homicides from January 2019 to June 2021, while non-fatal shootings increased 241%. Jeez, it sounds like we're talking about Chicago. I mean, you can only see this data in leftist ran areas, folks. It's so wild. The violent crime began ticking up in 2019 with 36 homicides that year compared to 26 in 2018. The city had held a 20-year average of 28 homicides per year, with 2004 as an outlier at 29. And they're just shooting these stats right through the roof, very similar to Lori Lightfoot over there in Chicago. Well, we have a clip here from Fox News talking about Portland and the lack of manpower versus homeless chop shops. When you see this footage, folks, it's so crazy. It is so crazy.
Springer, live in Seattle with more on this. This is absolutely unbelievable, Dan.
Yeah, it really is, Eric. Vehicle thefts are up across the country the last couple of years, including here in Seattle. But we went to Portland and saw something new. Chop shops out in the open, in and around homeless encampments. The city's homeless problem is on full display as you drive around, with 100 different encampments with people living in tents or broken down RVs. And mixed inside many of these camps are stolen cars that have been stripped, usually down to the metal shell. Gone are the tires, batteries, and catalytic converters. Oftentimes, they've been burned or littered with drug paraphernalia. We spoke with people who work next to some of these tent city chop shops.
Our city council and our mayor are idiots. Just straight up idiots. They don't seem to care.
It's rampant on the island and in North Portland. People are having their cars stolen right out of their driveway.
Last year, Portland had over 9,000 cars stolen. Police recovered 78% of them within 30 days, but they rarely, if ever, investigate, so the vast majority of these cases go unsolved and the thieves go unpunished. Witnesses tell us they've seen stolen cars brought into homeless encampments on tow trucks, and within 2 days they are completely stripped and torched with VIN numbers scratched off. Portland ditched its auto crime unit in 2006 and was gutted by defunding to appease rioters in 2020.
Our staffing issue is going to play a role in our ability to address this, and we know the problem is bigger than we can handle right now.
Carjackings were also big, way up in the country last year, a part of a larger spike in violent crime, but again, pretty different to go around and see a lot of these cars chopped up in homeless encampments. You don't see that in a lot of big cities, but you do in Portland. Eric?
Yeah, shocking. And that's what you get when you defund, apparently. Wow. All right, Dan, thanks so much.
Not only do you see it in Portland, but you're seeing it in California as well. We've talked about the homeless encampments here where you can't even walk on the curb anymore because their stuff is spilling out in the middle of the street. You have prostitution, you have rapes happening, you have murders and homicides. You have literally homeless people in Los Angeles going after US Olympians. We talked about that the other day. I mean, I've always said we literally have an app here in Los Angeles that helps people and guide them around human feces and these homeless encampments. It is nuts. It's crazy what these Democrats and these leftists are willing to vote for. I mean, there's a new stat out that said that 92% of Democrats would still vote for Joe Biden amidst everything going on if he were to run against Trump. It's just so baffling that they're willing to literally shit and sleep in their own bed. The average that we saw before in terms of the numbers and the outliers was soon obliterated with the data showed 2020 notched at 58% increase in homicides compared to the prior year. At 57 deaths, and 2021 record a 54% increase at 88 homicides. So remember, like 29 was an outlier. Now they're at 88% homicides. Nuts. The number of homicides in 2021 was a 238% increase from the numbers recorded in 2018. Check this one out. Check this one out. Non-fatal shootings have, meanwhile, more than tripled from 2019 to 2021. It's just they're breaking records. I mean, the Democrat Party If they're good at anything right now, the only thing they are good at is breaking records in a negative way in terms of homicides, in terms of assaults, in terms of robberies, in terms of freaking getting your car stolen. It's just like Joe Biden breaking records on immigration, breaking records on inflation. Haven't seen inflation numbers like this in 40 decades. I've never even witnessed it because I wasn't even alive back then. These numbers are so high. I mean, dude, this is the Democrat Party for you. 92% folks are still going to vote for Joe Biden. Freaking dude, that's not even all there. That gets lost, fumbles, fights with his teleprompter, fist bumps Saudi Arabia princesses. I'm laughing because it's so freaking outrageous. It is so outrageous that they're willing to just live in this type of America. The study found that the majority of suspects in both non-fatal shootings and homicide cases had been previously arrested and were known to the criminal justice system. Homicide suspects have been arrested an average of 6 times. Yes, let me just... I have to repeat these things because it's so crazy that I don't want you guys to think like you misheard me. Homicide suspects have been arrested an average of 6 times. So some were more, some were less. 6 times prior to killing, while suspects in the shootings have been arrested on average of 8 times before. Portland saw near constant protests and riots in 2020 following the George Floyd in Minneapolis, while protests spilling over into 2021. I mean, why would you not go out and protest and steal a bunch of crap? You're not getting arrested for it, and if you are, you're just being let loose because your DA doesn't want to do anything. The city saw at least 100 consecutive nights of protests and riots beginning in the summer of 2020, and businesses burned and looted. An autonomous zone established that resisted police interference. I mean, police couldn't even go into here. When somebody got injured in here because there were shootings and stabbings, again, all this stuff was taking place in this autonomous zone, that police couldn't get in, paramedics couldn't get in. There's literally a barricade, and like they had to drag people out. Like the actual Antifa people in there had to drag them out because they wouldn't allow these people in, these first responders. The crime in Portland follows a national trend that showed murders spiking by 30% in 2020 compared to 2019, marking the largest single-year increase in killings since the agency began tracking the crimes, according to the FBI. I know I'm repeating myself, but this is literally the type of America that Democrats want. They want crime. They want theft. They want robberies. They want murders. They want homicides. They want all this stuff. They want high inflation. They want... You know how I know they want high inflation? Because people vote for things like they happened in Seattle in terms of increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And they can't fathom why when they go get a burrito or a taco at Taco Bell, it's like $20. I've always talked about there's a Panda Express near me that's paying like $20 an hour for somebody to scoop food onto a plate, not cook it, not do anything, but stand there, take a ladle, scoop it, and put it onto a styrofoam plate, $20 an hour. And they can't fathom why stuff is so expensive, why there's high inflation. But yet you have Kamala Harris coming out, you have Joe Biden, and the whole White House administration. Karine Jean-Pierre specifically said this the other day, that, oh, we're kind of noting that we're getting higher wages for people and we're trying to decrease inflation. Let that one sink in. She's boasting about higher inflation and trying to lower it, but she's going to boast about the increase in wages. I don't know. All the while, you have Gavin Newsom of California wanting to give stimulus checks to curb inflation. Yeah. Higher wages is going to curb inflation. Giving out more stimulus checks, according to these Democrats, is going to curb inflation. These people are idiots, just like the lady said. They're all dumb. And that's every time you have a Democrat in office, you have to have Republicans come in and clean up the mess, folks. And that brings me to my next story, which completely cuts against the Democrats and the progressive left's narrative on allowing law-abiding citizens to conceal and carry in public, where we have a good guy with a gun killing a bad guy with a gun. Here are the details and the things you need to know about. The gunman who opened fire in an Indiana mall on Sunday evening was a 20-year-old man who brought 2 firearms into the building and waited inside a bathroom for more than an hour before fatally shooting 3 people, including a married couple, and wounding 2 more. The alleged shooter was inside a bathroom near the food court of the Greenwood Park Mall for about an hour and 2 minutes before he entered the dining area and fired his 6-hour firearm. He was neutralized within 2 minutes, but not before he was able to shoot 5 people, including a 12-year-old who survived and 3 people who were killed. This was according to the Greenwood Police Department chief, and he actually had a few words to say about this citizen who killed and neutralized the suspect. Let's go ahead and see what he had to say.
It was a very, very fast response, but I'm going to tell you, the real hero of the day is the citizen that was lawfully carrying a firearm in that food court and was able to stop this shooter almost as soon as he began.
Look, he is right to say that this man is a hero. 2 minutes is an eternity, and it probably would have been longer to receive the 911 calls and have police show up on scene, find the suspect, and ultimately neutralize him. Thank God this man was carrying. And again, like I said, it cuts against the Democrat and progressive left's narrative because they don't want this. This is why there was that Supreme Court case with New York where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of our Second Amendment rights to be able to conceal carry, where we don't have to show proper cause or special cause to the county and the state to prove to them why we need to protect ourselves against someone or something. It's none of their business on why. We have the right to carry, but they want to continually infringe on our right to carry. Thank God this person had a gun, saved a bunch of people probably. Unfortunately, yes, 3 people did die. But I mean, when you're talking about 2 minutes there and the amount of rounds this guy fired, this guy was, in fact, a hero. He put his life on the line for these people, and he saved a lot more. The police chief went on to say the most puzzling piece of this puzzle is the fact that he was in the restroom for an hour and 2 minutes. We believe he was getting ready. 2 people, including a gunman, were pronounced dead at the scene. 2 others were transported to the Indianapolis hospital, but could not be saved. There were some witnesses here that talked about what they saw and heard. Let's go ahead and hear about what they had to say.
Off in the corner, I looked over by the Mexican restaurant, which is right next door to us, and there was a guy with his pistol held on the bathroom. And I believe that guy to have possibly been the guy to have shot the shooter. And, you know, when police officers did get there, they put that guy in handcuffs.
Other than eyewitness accounts on what took place, we have more details emerging here and found that the alleged shooter was wearing a waistband holster and had several magazines strapped to him. He also had a backpack that was carrying a second firearm, a rifle that was broken down, which he left in the bathroom, and several rounds of ammunition. Investigators determined that the alleged shooter purchased the SIG Sauer on March 8, 2022 in Greenwood. The shooter entered the mall at a doorway near the food court around 4:54 p.m. He walks directly to the food court restroom. 1 hour and 2 minutes later, he exits the restroom and shoots Victor Gomez outside the restroom. The shooter then allegedly points his rifle into the food court where he shot at Pedro and Rosa Padina, who were eating dinner, and shot both of them. The gunman then continued to fire off rounds, striking a 22-year-old woman who suffered a leg wound. One of the gunman's bullet fragments ricocheted off one of the walls and struck a 12-year-old girl who was ultimately running away from the scene. At 5:55 p.m., only 2 minutes after he allegedly unleashed his attack, a legally armed Good Samaritan named, and I'm just going to give the last name, Dickin, returned fire with a pistol. Dickin had been shopping with his girlfriend at the time. Quote, the shooter fired several rounds, striking the suspect. The suspect attempted to retreat back into the restroom and failed, fell to the ground after being struck. The gunman allegedly fired 24 rounds. The Good Samaritan fired 10. And this is the whole thing, right? Fired 10 rounds, so probably spent the entire mag, because usually a mag will hold, what, 9 to 10? And I don't know what gun the Good Samaritan has. I don't see that listed here. But regardless, the Democrats want you to go back to musket days, right? They want you to go back to having, 5-round magazines. It just goes to show when the adrenaline's going, you're in a firefight, you need rounds. You need things to carry it because you're going after somebody else that might have more rounds than you that obtained things maybe illegally. Clearly, this guy got his firearm through a gun shop. Looked like he obtained it legally himself. Not all the information's out yet, but that seems to be the case where he fired 24 rounds and the guy fired 10. You need rounds. Okay, you need these longer magazines so you pump some guys full of lead. They're trying to kill a bunch of people, but Democrats don't want that, right? These things are all scary, right? Their calibers are scary. You got Joe Biden saying a 9mm will blow your lung out of the freaking body. What an idiot. You got freaking Whoopi Goldberg on The View saying that the AR-15 will just turn you to dust. And she goes, oh, you should have just, these kids were they're just vaporized. They were gone. It's like there's literally accounts of 5-year, like a little child being shot 5 times. And he wasn't blown to dust. He was shot 5 times and he survived with an AR-15. So it's not going to blow you to dust. I'm not discrediting the fact that it doesn't do massive damage. I fully understand that and I'm aware of where rifles are at and the type of damage they can cause. But the argument is stupid is what I'm talking about. The argument and the things they say about firearms is stupid. Thank God this guy had one, and thank God he was there, and thank God he had the balls. He had the balls to go out and neutralize the suspect. Quote, once he came out and started looking, it was 2 minutes by the time the first shot was fired until he was neutralized by our Good Samaritan. The police chief said investigators were still working to determine a possible motive. FBI forensic investigators are scouring data from his cell phone, which was wet because the alleged gunman placed his phone in the toilet. Police also went to the suspect's home in the hours following the shooting when they entered to find that the oven was on and there was a laptop in the oven and can of butane. There was also an eviction notice posted as well. The alleged gunman had attended Greenwood High School and was subsequently employed, but had left his job in May. So as time goes on, I will try to update you if there's anything noteworthy to be updated on with the shooting. But there you go. Another story cutting against the left's narrative of not wanting us to have firearms, not wanting us to be able to be using our Second Amendment rights on conceal and carry. And again, thank God for this hero here in Greenwood, Indiana. Now, in good news here, I want to leave off with something in terms of entertainment. We have Chris Pratt and Indiana Jones, folks. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. I love even adventure books, treasure hunting shows. And this is something I've been wanting to see for a while, is Chris Pratt donning the hat, being Indiana himself, maybe Indiana's son, maybe not. We'll find out. But if you want to see what Chris Pratt would look like wearing the hat, let's roll the clip.
I think we got a big problem.
No more parachutes!
Shorty, get our stuff!
Back. Tickets, please.
Fast. Kalima protects us. We are her children. We pledge our devotion to her.
Nobody to give orders.
Oh, shit. Molaram, prepare to meet Kali in hell. Oh!
I mean, folks, does he not look like Indiana Jones? Does he not look like he can carry that role? He has the manliness. He has just the look itself. He has the comedic timing. He has the full package to carry the helm there for that franchise. Fans have been speculating that Chris Pratt could step in as Indiana Jones in the newest iteration, but the 43-year-old star just laid those rumors to rest for good. The Jurassic World star addressed the idea while appearing on an episode of the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, according to Variety. Quote, "I don't even know who Steven Spielberg is." Who? Steven who? So obviously he was joking about the franchise. Quote, "No, aren't they doing Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford? All I know is I once saw a quote from Harrison Ford, and I don't even know if it was really him, but it was enough to scare me. And that was like, when I die, Indiana Jones dies. And I'm like, I'm not going to be haunted by his ghost of Harrison Ford one day when he dies if I play it," the actor continued. Apparently, the quote is real and comes from a 2019 interview Ford did with Today. Quote, "Don't get it. I'm Indiana Jones. When I'm gone, he's gone. It's easy," the 80-year-old actor star explained. Now, there are things coming out in terms of Chris Pratt still potentially being it, and that's what I'm holding on to. I think it would be a massive miss for Disney and the franchise not to put Chris Pratt into this role. He's one of the few handful of actors, and I would maybe say there's maybe 2 or 3 actors that could take this role and actually continue this franchise in the way it needs to be continued. And for Harrison Ford to be like, well, this character dies with me, I don't understand why it needs to die with you. This could be very much like a James Bond type thing where somebody can always continue to take the helm of this franchise. There's a lot of stories still to be told here. I'm fully aware they messed up on Indiana Jones 4. Praying to God they don't mess up Indiana Jones 5. Furthermore, the publication noted that Ford is planning to reprise the iconic role of Indiana Jones for the 5th time. They've already done filming this whole thing, so he is going to reprise it. This newest franchise installment is scheduled to be released in June 2023. They've had to push this back numerous amount of times, so now we got to wait a freaking whole nother year for this thing to come out. But this is up there with me as far as like Star Wars was. This is how excited I am for this film. Co-star Antonio Banderas described what it was like joining the cast of the 5th Indiana Jones film. He said, "So unbelievable," he said, encountering Ford on set per USA Today. "The first day I arrived, I was in makeup. I was in the makeup trailer. I turned around and there was in his full Indiana Jones costume with the hat and the whip. Phoebe Waller-Bridge was there with him too, and it was cool," he continued. Banderas got nostalgic, saying, "I still remember the first time I saw Indiana Jones in theater and the crowd was crazy about it. I thought this is like going back to the adventure movies in a completely different way. What I can tell you about my character is he's not a bad guy. He's a friend of Indiana. He's not the biggest character in the movie, but I don't care. I just like to be a part of that." The first Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, was released in freaking 1981. Okay. Then you got the other ones that debuted in 1984, 1989, and 2008. And Disney owns the intellectual property rights since acquiring Lucasfilm in 2012, which brings me to a point here. If you're going to spend all that money to acquire Lucasfilm, and Indiana Jones being one of those franchises, obviously Star Wars, and we know what they did with Star Wars, they're running that whole franchise into the ground. But this is an important franchise to move forward that can make Disney a lot of money. There is a market for this. Look at what they did with National Treasure. National Treasure made them a lot of money, and I believe they're even releasing another National Treasure on Disney Plus. But people want to see Indiana Jones. They want to see good stuff. They don't want to see freaking alien spacecraft coming out of the ground, okay? Everybody's like, what the hell moment. That moment was so much similar to The Mummy when The Rock came out as a scorpion, and he was half human and half scorpion, and everybody's like, what the hell is this? The CGI sucks, and the CGI wasn't even that great in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But again, somebody needs to take over the helm. Harrison Ford is not going to be able to do a 6th film. He can maybe reprise a role as Indiana Jones, but acting more like Sean Connery's type of role when Sean Connery was still around, I think in 84 and 89. But somebody needs to take over, and I still think it's going to be Chris Pratt. I think there's going to be a thing at the end where somebody's going to take the helm. It's not going to be Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf isn't wanted by Disney the way Shia LaBeouf's been acting, and as a huge fan of Shia LaBeouf, I've moved on. I got another bromance. His name's Chris Pratt, and he needs to be Indiana Jones. He has the look. He has the charisma. He has everything it needs to take. So let's keep our fingers crossed for this. In 2023, I'm hoping some rumors come out that this is the man, this is the guy that they're going to shoot for the next Indiana Jones. As always, folks, thank you so much for joining me here at the Bald Brad Show. I love your support and kindness. You are, again, true American patriots. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Leave me a nice comment down below on everything you think about what we went over. And I'll see you tomorrow here on the Bald Brad Show.